All right, start with the mount. So bring in the reference. So bringing the front view of the Picatinny rail. So what we want to do here is calibrate the size of it. So first we have to find out how big the, the top part of our Picatinny rail is. So you can just click L or make a sketch and then use D for dimensions. And then grab the reference, click calibrate, and then just calibrate that width so it's the same size, and that way you can easily align your reference. And now it's basically just getting everything built. So a good way to gather reference for certain things are see if you can find the pattern, and that's kind of where I got these. It's just a quick cheat way of getting stuff in. So you can see we're kind of adjusting some stuff. We weren't like 100%. So just extrude that face. And we'll just do a couple of subtractions here so we can get a shape correct to what we're seeing on the reference. So cutting that shape out, pressing Q, just push that shapes out. And now it's basically just getting everything pulled in. And sit correctly. So we're just basically drawing these real basic shapes, just blocking it out. What we're seeing on the reference and what we're seeing on the sketch. So this basically has this, helps that clamp hold it down. Just grabs onto our mesh here. So using constraints like parallel and stuff like that in your sketches will make sure that all your angles match. So slowly but surely we're blocking this out. At the moment, we're just working with a front angle. Again, just finding the dimension. So what I'm trying to do here is double click and get that so I can copy that number, but didn't work. But just bring in your top side reference and we'll do a calibration again from the one side to the other. And then you can just place it in place. Now you have a top reference as well. So it'll help you inform, make some decisions. Now the mount that we have in our reference in our photos is looks like a shorter mount than the one we have on uh, a sketch of. So basically, I want to make everything one to one, unless that's what you want to do. So just doing more sketching. So you can use different types of cylinders to get a perfect snug fit, so you don't have to kind of, it takes away the guesswork. So we're just adding these lines to the sketch so we can subtract. And then just making sure that those lines are flush with the cylinder. So if you're having any orbit problems, I would suggest maybe just hide the reference for a bit, because Fusion, wherever you click, whatever object is on your cursor, it will pivot around that, and sometimes having your reference plane in there will make that a little bit difficult. So still just in the block out phase. Here we're just looking at the reference, seeing that there is a ridge over there. We'll use the top reference now to make sure that it's nice and thick and exactly where we want it. So joining it with the mesh and then just removing what we don't need. Making sure everything looks good. So we're bringing back some of our old sketches here. We're going to do some subtraction here. So just looking at the reference and seeing what's happening, and then using the sketch to make sure that our dimensions are correct. So just cut that out. So making that flush and then just filleting a little bit, running off those corners. So we're rotating that face, going into the move tool, pivoting, and then rotating it, and then chamfering it up. Doing some more subtraction work. So just look at the reference. You'll see it has these ridges. And obviously you can use a sketch to make sure that it's correct. So what you saw there is I'm working off of the center of the previous cylinder that we made. Fusion is pretty cool like that. So if you click sketch and then you go cylinder, you can see you can find that middle point. It will kind of give it to you automatically. You can use that. Pull that down. So now we have the hole. And now we can start building that out. So I had to make some adjustments, as you saw in the reference, that it seemed like it had more space. So just making some quick adjustments on the fly here. Rounding out some corners, just flattening out some corners. There's really, all you have to do is look at your reference and see what needs to be done. That needs to be done where. Some more subtraction here. So we need that ridge. So what I was trying there is getting a nice 45-degree angle here. You can press D and then take the one line to the other line, and if they're not parallel to each other, it will try and find the angle between the two, so you can make some informed decisions that way. So basically what I'm trying to do here is build a shape so I can use it to extrude along that curve. That's what we're doing here. We need to add that bevel. So extruding the face up until the point where it's actually getting curved. And then we can just select that face and then pull it forwards or give it an angle, and you have a nice fall off. So just struggling to get that angle to work, or that face to do what we want it to do. So clearly not what we want. And we'll just change operation here to see if that helps. Clearly not. Excuse me. So let's do it before. We'll actually make it part of the Boolean operation, and that solves our problem. Certain problems have very simple solutions. And you will oftentimes run into stuff like this, so it's good to be creative with the ways you approach stuff. So we're just doing some more refining, what we're seeing on the reference here. Just looking around what needs to be done. So we're adding some screws into the mount. Yeah, good thing to do is when you're making those sketches is that you can use the pattern tool. So select it, and then you can copy paste. If you have like 3 to make, then press S, search for pattern, and there's a few options there you can use as well. So you're just making those screw holes. Now we're just making There you go. Now the cylinder, so you can see we clicked on the sketch and then it just snaps to that center point. Something that I really like about Fusion. Helps you to keep your faces really neat. So just copying over that edge angle we already had, so we can use it on the other side as well. So we don't have to go and create it and make sure that it's the right angle and all that stuff. Keep stuff a little bit more consistent. So using the sweep tool, select the face and then the edges. We'll make a new body, so you have a little bit more control. And this time we learned we do the angle before we actually do the Boolean operation. Now you can just push it forward. There you go. Give it a nice flip. So that wasn't in the correct position. Might need to be a little bit smaller and move up. Just moving it. Sometimes it moves when you press the M tool, grab those faces and move it. It will. I think the angle here was a little bit weird. So I'm doing some more chamfers. And this is all based on what you see on the reference, so you really want to keep an eye on that. Now we'll just add that piece here in the back. Needs that little bit of a fillet. So click the face, like push tool, click on the face where it needs to snap, and then we'll just keep sizing this up. So just seeing or doing what we were seeing in the reference. Making a cut. You know, or you boolean actually, and then do a quick fillet. So spinning around, making sure everything is looking good, what needs to be worked on. So far, so good. So let's keep on moving. You're gonna create that inset. So just creating the sketch and then making sure we can snap it. So it didn't work because the two faces would be on top of each other and that would actually delete the object. So making sure all of these chamfers are the same size, making some minor adjustments with the push tool, and then we'll just create another cylinder, snap it to the inside radius. Just make sure it fits nice and snug. Creating another cylinder on top of that. So this is basically part of the mount. Making some fillet operations here. So just changing the order of operation basically. So you just have something more representative of what we're seeing in the reference. Now we'll just create the handle. You can just isolate both. in my case, Shift V, and then Control Shift V will obviously unhide everything. So we're just looking at a reference, playing with the angles. For this, basically, we can just create everything, and then we'll use our constraints to make sure that everything is set. So yeah, parallel, make sure those are parallel. And then using the move tool, selecting sketch object, I will make sure that it's moving lines. And then we can just use D and then click both faces that are parallel and make sure those are all the same width. So activate line tool again, or L, make some more cuts here. And then press T, delete, or if you have T enabled, then you can just delete the faces you don't need. And now this forms the basis. So what we need to make sure is that this is actually aligned to the middle. There we go. So we're just selecting the center of the object and rotating it back. The align operation, obviously. You can, while you do the align as well, what I could have done was just click invert and it would have changed the angle. Would have been fine. So doing some fillets. And clearly we're seeing uh, so just playing with the fillet here. Make sure that width is good. So we need to play around with the shape a little bit here. So looking around, making sure that our angles are good. And then do the fillet. Adding some of those round shapes that you see on plastic. I think it's where it gets mounted when it gets printed or molded or something like that. So something holds it in place. That's why it has those circles. So I add those so when we go into high poly, we will have those already. Helps a little bit. Making that cut. And then some text. So just search text and then you can just click. I'm just using the basic parameters here. Just type in what you see. That will give us some text to work with. Just select the text and then here you go. So extrude command with the text and you should be fine. Just using a scale here. I'll have to do some more scaling. Or just make the box bigger, I guess. So select all them faces or objects. Use the move tool to get everything in place. And then using the push pull just to refine the height a little bit. So doing some more refinement on the shape. And now we're gonna make that crisscross pattern. So go into line tool, select the face, and then make sure those two are perpendicular, parallel. We'll use the pattern tool inside of when we're doing sketches. It's a little bit different, or it looks a little bit different than one you would use when you just search it. So creating some more lines here. So doing pattern tool, selecting the sketch lines that we need, and just changing some parameters here, going into symmetry. And just basically what I'm doing is counting the shapes that I have or how many I have to create. Making another sketch, making sure that's 90 degrees to those lines, and then just make sure that the dimensions match as well. So, and then we can just use the parent tool again, select those two edges, choose the angle, symmetry again. Basically just looking at the reference to see how big or small these things have to be. All right, so basically just canceled all of that and we're just rebuilding everything again. So I decided to keep this in so you can see it happens, man. Sometimes you have to redo stuff, you know? So creating our shape, going into the pattern tool. Now we just need to select our angle here. There we go. So if your angle is part of the selection, it's not going to select. So again, creating a line perpendicular. Make sure those are constrained correctly. And pattern tool again. Getting our angle. So what we need to do is select all these faces. In the profile. And then pressing extrude or going into extrude mode Make sure we get those faces cut in. So clearly we missed something in one of our profiles, but I mean, quick sketch and we can fix it. There you go. And then the faces that didn't cut all the way through, you just go into the push pull command or extrude command. Just remove those. Push pull will keep the angle though, so on those that have weird angles, you might want to. So basically just creating more like sketching on top of the object so we can create those lines that we missed. Make sure that we get those things in. Just pushing those things out. And then there you go. Subtracting it from the object. We have a little tiny edge there. And then just doing some more sketch work. Now you can create all these sketches in one, or you can just go back to your sketch as well. Whatever you think will do the job for you. Yeah, I'm trying out a different method. Creating a cube, making sure that it keeps the angle. So instead of creating sketches, so two different ways tackling the same problem. There you go. Let's cut them out from the shape, but should be good. And now just make a cut through the middle. So we can just mirror this over to the other side. Just doing Boolean operations here, joining both objects together and just giving it a nice fillet. So looking around what still needs to be done, we can start refining the shape here. So my selection priority just didn't work there, so I had to go into it manually just to get my hotkeys to work again. So just sketching this out to what we're seeing on the reference. So going into sketch mode, make a cylinder through the middle. And this is just basically looking at what we're seeing in the reference and then building stuff according. So just doing some adjustments. Then we'll just refine the clamp a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time on this as it won't really be seen at all. So as long as the shapes are in place, unless you want to show how it animates and all that stuff, then you might want to spend some more time. But it's a it's a very simple system anyway, in terms of how it works. Doesn't need a lot of parts. So creating that cut, the reference, as we see in the reference. Doing an extrude to that face, snapping it to the inside of that groove, or that hole that we just cut, and then joining those two together. Now I'm doing some adjustments here, but honestly, if it's not really being seen or seen as much, there's no point in really doing a lot of this stuff. It's really up to you. It all just depends on what the mesh will be used for and what will be seen and whatnot. So looking around. So creating the holes, and it seems like the clamp has these hooks that go in there. So you'll see. Creating the basic shapes here. Doing fillet. Doing an offset. So O. And then just extruding to both sides. And then pushing that face down, and there we go. Hiding our Picatinny rail so we can just focus on what we're seeing here. You want to make sure when you go into fillet and you selected both. I don't know if this is fixed by the time this is released, but you can just go back into edge mode and then click chamfer again. It will automatically force it not to be in full fillet mode. So just creating more of what we've seen, what is seen in the reference. And done. So we have that inside of the shape now. And then it's just down to making some adjustments to the size. So doing a cut. And making sure nothing sticks through the mesh. And then just snapping those faces to the rectangle that we just created. creating a cylinder and then doing an extrude from the base, going into the cylinder, making a sketch. There we go. Let's make the screws. Create a cylinder. Chamfer. Going to poly. And then there we go. Just gonna select the face and then you can just chamfer those or fillet those. Give you a good result. And then we'll just create that 45-degree groove that you see around the screw opening. So you can just create a cylinder, chamfer that cylinder, and then there you go. So just doing a same size chamfer on both sides. Select the object, copy it over. If you really want to make sure that it's perfectly placed in that hole, you can just use a line. Looking around, making sure all the dimensions look good. So the front looks too big, too long. So we're gonna move that backwards so you have more space. So you can just do a push-pull, selecting the one face. It should grab everything. It doesn't always work that way, but push-pull or move tool will be life-saving. And then we'll just finish off the shapes here. So creating the screws again. And you'll see we don't create the other side of the screws because our laser or IR pointer will be basically on top of this thing the whole time. So if you want to show the mount by itself or anything like that, you'll have to create the rest of the screws. But this should end off this chapter for us.